Are you ready?
Almost. Okay, go ahead.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Let the minutes show everyone is present and accounted for. And we need a motion to approve the agenda. We're going to have one change on the agenda. When a gentleman calls in here on the telephone, we're going to move him into the agenda wherever it falls. So if we could have a motion to approve the agenda, please. Virginia, seconded by Jeff. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Y'all got a copy of the minutes from the February 10th meeting. Are there any additions, corrections? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve. Virginia, seconded by Doak. Thank you. Any corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, public comment. Do we have anyone that wants to make a comment? No, good.
Mr. Chair, we do have Mr. Utek online now.
Oh, yes, okay. Mr. Utek, you're online. We're gonna move you up here, so is that you on the screen?
Yes.
That is.
All right, good. Pat, you wanna bring your issues up and then let's discuss it, please. Or,
Wait,
hang on.
Turn on the microphone. There you go. Issue we have is insurance that we have says we have to have with our contract. So we're just asking for adjustment. And we have brought our agent here which will know most of your questions that you asked us. We didn't have answers, and we feel by having him on Zoom, he can answer most of the questions. That's where we're at right now.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I can probably review kind of what the issues were of the committee. And if I'm wrong, please, committee members, correct me or add in whatever you want. Mr. Utek, first of all, thanks for being available. Really do appreciate it. I think one of the biggest things that, two of the things that the committee was looking for is, what are we seeing other fairs and the like? What are their coverages? Currently, we have seen that some may be a little bit lower, others may be about the same. What is the difference in price from a quote standpoint is probably one of the biggest ones. If you have a general aggregate at 5 million per event as opposed to 2 million per event, what is the change in the cost of the quote? Because from the county standpoint, the Fair Board is asking to have that bring it down from 5 to 2 because of cost concerns. And the county would then be asking, well, what is the difference in the quote? And like I said, if I'm misquoting the committee, please correct me.
I have one addition, and that was we had a question about what's the difference between umbrella, general aggregate, and excess liability.
Okay. So go ahead, Mr. Utek, however, and it'll be free flowing.
Okay. So good questions. A lot of the time, we see other fairs have less coverage than the 5 million that's been recommended by the board here. Most of the time, their base coverage is about 1 or 2 million, maybe with an excess of $1 million in the case if they get a base of 1 million in an aggregate coverage. So the 5 million's a little high. Usually you don't see those until you start to run into stuff like the Wisconsin State Fair or one of the bigger counties. So usually it's on the lower end for most other areas. As far as the savings that can be gained by not having a 5 million requirement, most of the time with fair coverage, it is still gauged upon attendance, but also just because the attendance is a factor, the amount of coverage is the other factor. So if you have like a 2 million requirement, then your cost can be anywhere between, it varies, like I said, with your attendance, but the cost savings can be quite considerable. Anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000 depending on. And as far as I believe excess, umbrella, and general liability was that the third question there?
Excess
Yeah.
liability, umbrella, and general aggregate.
Okay, so your general aggregate on like I said, a lot of these smaller ones is about usually a $2 million aggregate. Your umbrella will ride on top of that, which basically just says, so if you had a $1 million umbrella with a 2 million aggregate, that means you'd have to use up all of your base policy before you'd touch the umbrella, but it would provide essentially $3 million worth of coverage.
So the 2 million, so I'm going to do it this way, just for example, if I may. So if you have a $2 million general aggregate per event and you have an additional 1 million umbrella, the 2 million per event happens, and the umbrella is an additional 1 million on top of the 2 million if for some reason an event was greater than 2 million.
Yes.
And so when we look at some of this, there's an item here that says excess liability, which is general aggregate and each occurrence limit. Is excess liability, is that just a fancier name for umbrella?
Yes.
Okay. I don't speak insurance speak, so at times that's a little more difficult for me to understand that. So probably the part that is what the committee is probably looking for is, what are we seeing for certificates of liability from other fairs? Because if we do it that way, then we're looking and seeing, then we can compare apples to apples, because we'll have the each occurrence limit, we'll have the personal and advanced injury limit, the products, the partial legal liability. We'd probably be able to do that. I guess I don't want to speak for the committee, and again, now I'm kind of speaking for you, Mr. Benish and Ms. LaCrosse, is you would like to see the of anything, probably the 5 million go down to 2 or 1. Is that a fair request or statement?
That is our wishes.
As for the other limits, they seem to be okay and sufficient. And Mr. Utek, you can probably chime in here as well, since you would probably seen the numbers that we have as opposed to limits. Those seem to be pretty standard. Otherwise, the one that varies from event to event is more the general aggregate limit. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, the way it usually works is you have like a million occurrence. So each time something happens with an aggregate of 2, some policies do 1. It just varies on what your event is.
So if for the committee, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, is what the Fair Board would like the committee to decide is to change the general aggregate limit from a 5 million to either a 2 or a 1. The rest of the limits, from what I'm seeing, can stay in place. Yes, Supervisor Baker.
Do we have an umbrella on ours, or is it just straight?
The umbrella is the same thing as excess liability.
So what is our base and what is the excess liability?
So currently, right now, for what we've had in the past in the contract, the general aggregate would be 5 million with an additional 1 million umbrella on top of it. What the Fair Board would be asking for is it be a $2 million general aggregate with a 1 million umbrella on top of it. And again, if at any time I'm misspeaking, please someone interject, because I don't want to say that I'm speaking for you at the Fair Board. I'm just summarizing from what I understand, but if I misspeak, please correct me.
So I just have a question then. If we're looking to go from the $5 million general aggregate to a $2 million general aggregate, what is the cost difference? What is the current quote for 5 million and what would the difference be if we were to go to 2 million?
And maybe Mr. Utek can say it differently. Part of, if I'm understanding correctly, what happens is there will definitely be a lower amount, but part of how that is determined is by what would be considered the average attendance of the event.
That is correct.
So what the Fair Board would have to do is probably provide what is the typical historical attendance for the fair for those 3 days, and then from there the quote would probably be calculated from that point. Would that be fair, Mr. Utek?
That'd be exactly what happens. Yes.
Then I guess at that time is when I'd be prepared to make a decision, because I was hoping at this meeting we were going to have a quote for one and a quote for the other to make that determination. So
Quotes.
I don't have any information that I can make the decision as of yet.
Go ahead, Mr. Utek.
Quotes for an event cannot happen usually anywhere about 90 days from said event. They usually won't, a carrier won't provide those quotes anytime sooner than that.
You must have some kind of a ballpark.
I mean, currently, you guys had, I believe, let me reference my notes here.
We got 100 years of county fair. I think we can have a number of attendees who are out there for a guessing.
Mr. Chairman, I do have attendance from 2019, 2018, and 2017.
Okay, so previously, your coverage for the fair was in the arena of $5,400 or $5,800. It had some fluctuation. If you went with the current policy you had in 2019 into the 2020 or 2021, I would see a reduction, but based on the numbers I have for what your attendance is, I can't give you an exact amount. Like I said, if I say one number and it comes back as a different one because 2021 is different, I just don't want to give you a false sense, but it should be a reduction for 2021.
I'm gonna press you a little bit, Mr. Utek, only in the respect, and I don't want to specifically speak for the committee, but I don't think they're taking the number that you would give them and chiseling it in stone. It's
Sure.
more okay, and I'm gonna make up the number for right now. It's $5,000, give or take $500, and that at least gives the committee a general idea. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot to give a number right now today, but from the feeling of the committee, from what I'm sensing here today, is if we can even just get kind of a range, what it would be at 5 million and what it would be at 2 million, that would go a long way in helping them to make a decision.
Sure. So with your current policy, I would say it would be, if it was 5,800 last year, or well, 2019, then I would say it'd probably be somewhere in the $800 realm of savings for 2021. If we reduce some of the levels, if we found somewhere else that might provide it, bringing it from 5 to 2 is a pretty big difference, and it could even be larger than the 800, somewhere maybe even closer to 1,200.
Thank you.
So
Okay. Doug,
did I just hear that the savings is only $400?
$1,200, 800 to 1,200.
Well, we went from 800, we were going to go down to 800 in 2021 for a $5 million policy, right? I thought I heard the $5 million policy would be $800 less.
Mr. Utek?
No, I was talking about if we reduced. So currently, your current policy had a 5 million completed operations coverage. If it was reduced to the proposed 2 million with a million umbrella, it could end up being a savings of $800 to $1,200.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I know this is uncomfortable for you, Mr. Utek. We are not, like I said, I want to be very clear. We're not chiseling these numbers in stone. You're giving us best guess
Potential.
from your historical experience.
Yes.
What is the pleasure of the committee, Tom?
Just a question. What exactly does this insurance policy cover as far as the fair board? Is it cover everything that goes on those grounds during that event, or do vendors have their own insurance? What is covered and what isn't?
I'll try my best, and then maybe Mr. Wisnicki will jump in. As a county, we always have all of our own buildings and property. We have them under our own insurance. But when we rent out our buildings and property for events or the like, we require those entities to have their own insurance. I think probably the best example to give you, especially from the fairgrounds standpoint, would be the race promoter and the racetrack. They have to have a certain level of insurance, of which theirs, because of the races and the like, is at the $5 million level. They are responsible in getting that insurance, securing that insurance, and giving us a proof of insurance before they can ever run a race. So the county does have theirs as what I'd like to call as a fallback, but we are not in, I guess, what I'll call first position. If something were to happen, the organization's insurance is the primary one to address it. If there was any excess, well, we'd have to see what happens from there. Is that a fair summary, Mr. Wisnicki?
I think that's fair.
In relation to the proposal and the policies, then hopefully nothing ever will happen seriously, but what if there's a large claim and there's a number of injuries and the claims go into the tens of millions of dollars? What happens then?
Again, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wisnicki as well as Mr. Utek, what would happen is the organizer's insurance would be put to its max and paid out. I would say then after that, they would, because I am going to assume if there was any type of claim, they would claim not only the organizer, but the county as well. So then the county's insurance would then kick in. And if somehow it is greater than both the organizer and the county's insurance, I'm not sure what type of avenues they would have to be able to pursue.
Well, the short answer is we litigate. You have to figure out who's responsible for whatever injury occurred. And then we start, fighting it out and apportioning, that liability. It could be if for some reason the county is held liable, it could be that we have to pay if the insurances are exhausted. But that would all be litigated out. Certainly, as a county, we have a number of immunities available to us that potentially could help us. If it went into the tens of millions of dollars, I would hope, I would think that we would have a good group of attorneys representing us, and we would come out of it okay. But there's always that risk if some major accident happened, litigation would ensue.
But that would be true with almost anything, whether it's the races, whether it's the fair, or any other type of event that could be held on county property.
Right. I mean, it happens every day. People get in a car wreck and the insurance is not sufficient to cover the damages. They sue and you try to collect what you can, and that's how it happens.
I think the item before the committee, if I may, because I'm now going to talk for the Fair Board is, does the committee need exact numbers, or does the $800 to $1,200 savings or projected savings, is that sufficient? Is that a sufficient number to allow for action by the committee today?
Any, Doak?
Could the Fair Board put the amount we're talking about here, the 800 to 1,200, in perspective with what their total budget is, or how this would help them out in a percentage? You know, is this a lot of money?
I don't want to speak for the Fair Board. I'm going to say anytime you can save $1,200, then they would try to do that. As for their total annual budget, that does vary. It's in the tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the acts and the like. But now I'm getting into an area that I am not as knowledgeable about, so I'll leave that to Nancy and to Pat.
Anything we can save, we're happy with, because like I say, we want to make sure we have the coverages, and we really have not in the last few years had anything. We had one person get hurt 2 years ago. She broke her wrist and she went on social media and started to blast us. We turned around, went back to her insurance agent, and they took care of the matter. But this was when the last county board was still in effect. She thought she was gonna, and we give it to our insurance company. They handled everything for us. But anything we can save, because it's nonprofit organizations that are working at this fair. So if we've got to lose on one end, they're going to lose on their end too. So anything we can provide to keep it running. We have years ago received money from the county, and that hasn't been for the last 20 years. So we have learned to move on our own and try and do things to fundraise and keep ourselves above water. So we try to keep our cost at a minimum, as this is what the request is really about.
I'd just like to add that we are doing our best to continue with the fair. This last year has been troublesome for everyone. We are hoping that we can put on a fantastic fair this year and have everyone come out and feel comfortable. So that's our goal. We appreciate everyone's time and effort in this. Basically, anything that we can save, whatever we can save on a policy, hopefully we can put forth to better the fair for everyone in the county. And we do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Question for you. Your stands, the individual stands, I assume that the entertainment has its own insurance, but about the stands, you also make them provide insurance? Okay.
Yes, certificates of insurance are required. Vendors, entertainment, and the stand owners as well.
Okay.
So then, in perspective,
Yes.
those would actually be the first in line on a lawsuit. This insurance that we're talking about right now would be the second, and the county fallback would be the third position on insurance if you were to go that far.
Depending on where the event is, yes,
Sure.
Supervisor.
So I look at insurance, and I pay plenty in insurance premiums, as something that you only need it when you need it. And liability is one of those things you never know when you're going to need it. And, you know, the $1 million policies are pretty common. 5 million sounds high from what we're being told. My only concern with going from 5 million to 2 million is, if you're looking at the dollars, $3 million is a lot of coverage to give up, and you only need it again when you would need it. But the fact that we've got vendors have their insurance, the county itself has insurance, you don't want to be overinsured either. $800 to $1,200 in savings is a lot, but giving up $3 million in coverage is a lot too. So I guess that's a question. Do we want to give up $3 million in coverage for an $800 savings as a guesstimate?
Dope.
I still feel like I need some perspective. the question before was about what is it? Just like you're saying, we're giving up something here for allowing a savings of 1,200 for the Fair Board. What do they get for it other than $1,200? Because I don't know what that means in the context of their budget. It's really hard to make a judgment call when we don't know how strapped they are for money when we're being asked to give up $3 million of liability.
I think it's about the total budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, is a little over $100,000 a year if you include entertainment and everything else. So you're probably saving about a 1%. And while 1% doesn't seem, 1% is a small percentage, it isn't necessarily a small amount of dollars.
Correct statement. I'll just, I don't know if this will give you any insight. Attendance at the 2019 fair was 6,535. Attendance at the 2018 fair was 6,028. Attendance at the 2017 fair was 10,505. So our attendance went down the last 2 years. We want it back up, and we want to do whatever we can to continue the fair. And attendance is a big part of that, a huge part of that. I understand the concerns that the committee members have, but in this day and age, we're just asking to save whatever we can. And it's not that we're just going to save it. It will go from one pot to another, so to speak, to be used for something else to continue the fair.
And I think that the question that Mr. Baker has could probably be answered by distributing the 2019 annual report that we should have.
If I may,
We
Mr.
do have it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, because I'm getting a sense for the committee, and I don't want to speak for the committee, is that there is still some concerns. Is I know that we had previously, but maybe on paper is, how do I want to describe this? There's the savings, which is an operational standpoint from the Fair Board, which I understand. I think probably the biggest concern or anxiety that the committee may have is if we're going from $5 to $2 million, is that, again, how does that compare to the other fairs? So if you have the Door County Fair, you have the Allegheny County Fair and the Shawano County Fair, and most of the fairs that are our size or maybe even a little bit larger, if they're doing the $2 million per event, then that helps to provide us, and again, I don't want to speak specifically for committee, but that provides us some comparison that we have other county fairs that are our size or slightly larger, and they've been operating under the $2 million general aggregate limit, or even possibly 1 million. So it gives them some context as to what other fair boards or fairs are doing. So therefore, from the cost standpoint, because from the county standpoint, we're not paying for the insurance, you are, but we also want to make sure that we're not underinsuring the event, which could therefore bring the liability back onto us if something were to happen. Is that a fair statement for the committee? For those that can't hear that, there are nods, so that's an affirmative. So again, because I do want to try to put this to bed for not only this committee but for the Fair Board, is I'm now going to challenge the committee just a little bit. If the Fair Board were to bring a list of county fairs, and I could provide them a list of county fairs to try to get us their insurance limits to provide to the committee at the next board meeting, will the committee be willing to make a decision at the next board meeting? Again, I can't force you, but I'm going to guess that the Fair Board is wanting some direction that we can have there, some resolution.
I would say yes for myself.
I'd say yes.
Are we talking next board meeting or next committee meeting?
I'm sorry, next committee meeting, I apologize, because this does not need to go to the board. It just needs to go to the committee.
Okay, let's take a,
You don't, if you want to vote, it's not a motion that you need to do. You're just directing me.
right, let's just, Virginia, your feeling?
Yeah, I'm okay with hearing what everybody else is charging and go forward from that, make a decision next meeting.
All right, Jeff,
Yes.
Tom,
It just comes down to the fact that what is the county comfortable with? Are you comfortable with the $5 million policy or are you comfortable with the $2 million policy? That's, to me, what it costs doesn't make any difference. So whatever the committee feels, go.
From your legal counsel, I mean, you've had 3 meetings on this. I mean, I think the evidence is before you. Do you want to reduce your coverage from 5 million to 2 million, which the agent seems to suggest that is in the range of reasonableness? But again, that's up to you if you want a little more coverage. The savings for the Fair Board's $800 to $1,200. I don't know what more information you need. There is coverage for the vendors. I assume the carnival also has coverage, and the county has obviously coverage for its facilities. So while it'd be nice to see what others are doing, I think you can make a determination on your own what we want for Kewaunee County. Certainly 3-4 meetings for $800 to $1,200 worth of
Right.
savings doesn't seem to be cost effective, but I'm just an attorney.
okay.
If, Mr. Chair, if,
Doak,
if,
what-
sorry,
I
go
didn't
ahead.
hear from Doak yet.
Actually, I think I could make a decision this meeting. I could make a decision this meeting, but more information would help.
Okay. All right. Scott?
Do we want more discussion then? I mean, if.
I was going to say, if the committee is actually looking for an administrative recommendation, from an administrative standpoint, I am, as administration, I'd be comfortable with the 2 million, not below that, but I would be comfortable with the 2 million from the verbal information that I've received from the Fair Board as well as from Mr. Utek. 2 million seems to be standard for a number of these smaller fairs. So therefore, from a county standpoint, I'd be comfortable with 2 million.
Okay.
I would encourage,
Dan?
I appreciate the, committee wanting to do due diligence and really do what's right for the county. But, we have brought these people here 3 times, and it would be nice if we had a decision rather than having to bring them back again. And it would be nice if we had a decision, before I managed to read through all of these statutes and things for their sake.
Go ahead, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we allow the Fair Board to reduce their insurance coverage from 5 million to 2 million.
Okay, we have a motion from Tom.
I will second that.
Second by Virginia. Any additional comment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed. Doak?
Mr. Chair, what I will have done then is I will have our attorney put together some type of amendment to the contract, which therefore states in the contract that they can have from a general advocate of 5 to a general aggregate of 2.
All right.
From the Fair Board's point, I would like to thank you for the time you took to deal with this matter. Appreciate everything.
Thanks, Mr.
Me
Pat.
as well. I thank you very much,
Thank you,
members of
Nancy.
the committee, for giving us your time. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Mr. Utek, if you want to stay on, feel free, but you are not required to stay on. So again, thank you for your time, sir.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Moving forward, administrative report.
UTECHT.
Financial report. Are you gonna take it?
I got it.
Or are you gonna take it?
I got it. Okay.
All right.
So first of all, sales tax collections collected in February for January, 112,125, up a little bit from last year. We have 3 full years of history, although I wouldn't really count 2020 as normal. The expectation though for the next 3 to 4 to 5 months is it will be lower, possibly lower than our average, which is about a little over $100,000 a month in the previous few years, and that's seasonal changes. January 21 financial statements are out. It's January. There's very little to talk about, so I won't say anything other than I know the sheriff's department has a furnace in the evidence building that went out. The bill for that will be $2,900, obviously not budgeted, but the sheriff's department's a $4 million budget. We're not going to do anything now. We'll wait till later in the year. If it's part of a bigger need, then we'll end up transferring it. But let's say the expectation, the anticipation though, is that within a $4 million budget, they can find $2,900. Next 2020 year end, I'm down to a handful of items. By next month, we will have at this committee meeting, we should have the unaudited year end to present. And at that time, we would also say, here's the surplus for the general fund, and there will be a surplus. And there'll be a handful of carryover items. One's happening later today. The other 2 potential ones are the Door County broadband. That's a tower in Lincoln. Should be done by the end of the point where I can say we'll have numbers. We can just record those. The Bug Tussle broadband, our part of it hasn't started yet. They've been doing work, but we haven't started the loan process yet. So that whole thing will need to be carried forward. And the next gen 911 update is in progress. The sheriff tells me it'll be done, but we're already in March and I need this by the end of the month. So I think that's going to end up being carried forward in the next year. All that means is we have a project that's been approved, budgeted for, but the project isn't complete. So it's kind of a housekeeping request to carry it the next year and finish the project. Next on the list, carryovers, talked about that. Evidence, talked about that. Also next month, what we have annually is we have a remaining amount in our contingency fund from last year, and we'll bring forward, that was about $64,000. And I'll make a proposal what to do with it, as well as the last year, I think was the first year, possibly second, where any surplus in the general fund has been, a percentage of it has been transferred to the debt service fund for early extinguishment of debt. That would come forward next month as well. So not much this month, but next month will be a little busier for me. Also, I did email out the capital improvement plan, which, like the videos that I tried playing this morning, we have some nice pictures of our new ice rink, warming shelter, and an updated Ransomware's cabin in there. So again, the capital improvement plan is what could be coming up in the next 5 years. Everything in there still has to go through the budget process, which would happen in the late summer, fall for the following year. So all that is items that could be coming up in the near future. And that's all I have.
Okay. Medical and dental.
Again, you had the first 2, the medical and the dental, in your packet. The large claimants was given to you separately on your desks this morning. Nothing really, because it's the first month of the year, it's tough to really talk about in any real manner. As you can see, medical loss for 2020 was 3.59% above what would have been what was collected in dues. For dental, that was 6.95% below what was collected in dues. And currently, right now, we have one potential large claimant for 2020. This is early, but I believe I know who that employee is, so this is not a surprise, and I don't believe there will be much more in expenses for that large claimant. Yes, Supervisor Baker.
I believe in December, this same page had 16
Which
claimants on
page?
it.
I'm sorry.
The large claimants.
Oh, yes. Okay.
How did we, wasn't that a monthly update? How do we go from 16 to 1?
Because you go by calendar year. Because
Those are kept on the sheet. Once they're entered on the sheet, they stay there for the whole year?
Correct. Because what it is it's done from a stop loss insurance standpoint. So the stop loss insurance is at $55,000. So what we do as just from a tracking standpoint, anyone that is roughly about 50% or over, so about $27,500 in expenses, we start to track that over the course of the year just to understand, is it the large claimants that are really helping to drive the increase in our healthcare costs, or is it not? So when the January starts, we start anew because the stop loss starts anew.
Okay, I guess I'm going to have to get with you separately to understand that, because it seems like we are seeing an update for a lot of those individuals every month. They were They
Correct.
were
So-
incurring costs. How could they all quit at the end of the year and not show up
Well,
next year?
and the reason why they quit all at the end of the year is because the stop loss insurance is $55,000 per calendar year. So then once January 1 starts again, it's a new $55,000. Yes.
It resets, but some of those we're seeing, pretty significant costs every month. It's just surprising they disappear off the sheet.
Well, and again, the whole reason why they disappear off the sheet is, as you said, because they reset.
Okay.
So could we be seeing them again? Depending on who they are, absolutely.
Got it.
As for the overtime, again, it's January, so it's a little early. There's not much to throw in there. As we go through the months and we start to see trends or concerns, I would then bring those up for discussion and awareness of the committee.
Okay. Any questions on that part? If not,
Just a
Go ahead,
question on the
Tom.
sales tax. I know we discussed this at the last finance meeting, but when did we think that we were going to go to the board with extending the sales tax?
I believe that the sales tax, and I'm looking at the chairman, will be up for this month's county board meeting for extension.
I had said to bring it forward right away. There's no point in waiting.
So it will
Thank
be
you.
on the county board meeting, the county board agenda for March.
Thank you.
okay. Next up, our new KCDC director.
Go ahead, Amber. I'll let you go.
Okay, I think I'm on here. Thank you, guys. I just wanted to introduce you guys. We did hire our new executive director, Ben Nelson. He has just a few comments that he would like to say, but we felt it was important that everybody in this committee met Ben as soon as possible. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thank you. As Amber said, my name is Ben Nelson, so I'm the new Executive Director of the KCEDC. I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to make my introduction here today. A little bit about myself. I live in the township of West Kewaunee, so just not too far up the road here. I've lived in the county for about 5 years. My educational background, I have two bachelor's degrees. From UW Green Bay, one in biology, one in environmental science. And then I went back to school as an adult and got my master's degree in organizational leadership and administration. Some of my previous work experience, I was a training director for Lakeshore Technical College. Some of you may recognize me. I was also the park superintendent in Door County for a number of years. Did a lot of grant projects there, did their strategic plan and things like that. So, that's some of my focus getting settled into this role, is just getting to know all the different people that have invested and committed to our organization, and making sure to stay in communication with those individuals so that they understand our progress and understand our story and how we're offering some value to the community. So with that, if anybody's got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I just wanted to make sure that I'm making those connections throughout the community. And I guess one other piece that I'll throw out there is
my intention is at a minimum is to try and interact with this group at least on a quarterly basis. My understanding is historically we haven't connected with this committee on a regular basis. So that's a big priority for me.
Okay. So Amber, I suppose you're looking forward to taking a little time off, huh?
I don't know what to do with all my free time, John. Yeah, no, we're all very excited that Ben is on board with us. He's got a lot of great ideas, and we're looking forward to where this year is going to bring.
Okay, good.
Thank you. guys.
Welcome, Ben. Look forward to seeing you. As long as you don't want to go rob banks, we can pull that thing down too. There you go. All right. Number 9. Scott, you want to bring us up on this one?
Certainly. It had been brought up to me that the executive committee will actually be discussing a request or an item similar in that the public health director has been since the beginning of the pandemic putting in a very, very, very large number of hours on evenings, weekends, holidays, and the like. So the question has been brought up as to whether the county should be providing some sort of, I guess I would call it a bonus or supplemental payment for duty well above and beyond. From a funding standpoint, the CARES Act funding does provide revenue to allow for additional payments in this respect. So while the executive committee would specifically decide the complete dollar amount to provide to the public health director, the finance committee would have to approve that it come from the CARES Act money, which is where I would assume we would want it to be. And I would assume that the executive committee would be looking for some type of recommendation as to the finance committee's temperature on the dollar amount. And so just as a general item, I just wanted to provide, here are the number of hours up until Valentine's Day of this year that the public health director had been logging in. And that's just what she logged in. I'm going to guess that there are other items and phone calls and the like that is not part of this. And last but not least, from an administrative standpoint, we would not be, I do not feel comfortable providing any type of formula or the like, since this is a executive committee and a county board function. That is something left to the committees to determine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
John,
Yes.
over here.
Oh, and sorry, Dan. Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Should this be discussed in executive session, closed session?
It can, because it's only pay and it's not an evaluation. It is not a closed session item. I did try to verify that with our corporation counsel, and he said, unless you're evaluating the performance of an employee, pay is not considered a closed session item.
Evaluation of sorts, though?
It would be included, wouldn't it?
We're not. I'm going to say no, and the reason why is because the person that evaluates the public health director is the county administrator, and so therefore, unless there's a specific item about her performance that the executive committee wants to talk about, then that could be done in closed session. But as from a compensation standpoint, anything that has to do with compensation is an open session item.
Well, to move this along, not that this committee, needs any help moving along at its usual lightning speed, right? I had talked to John about this. I had brought this up. I do think I do have strong feelings that when you are a salaried position, you work outside of the normal hours. I do think, and I know that we're on public comment here, and this will get me into some sort of trouble. I do think that there is at times a mentality that salaried in government life means that you just don't clock in and out like others, and doesn't necessarily include outside of it. So I want to make that very clear. When you are salaried, you work additional hours. However, I do think there is a level of reasonableness as well. And I can't imagine that there would be anybody that would debate that what we have seen this past year very definitely falls outside of even what a normal salary, the expectations of a normal salaried position would be. How do you put a dollar figure on that? Well, that's always the challenge, isn't it? And I had thrown out to John when I talked to him, I had suggested a figure of $2,000 to $4,000. But the committee can agree or disagree with that figure. I would be fine even, two. I think it's a way of saying, hey, we greatly appreciate you've gone above and beyond. I don't know what John's feelings on that were, as noted by my bringing donuts here today. I think I have shown that I'm not as cheap as Supervisor Mastelier. So, he may have other thoughts, but that's kind of to get things moving along. That was kind of my thoughts. Committee can do what it wishes.
Thanks, Dan.
Would you like another donut?
My wife tells me I'm cheap. I'm tighter than a tamarack knot. So, my thought was this: is that I agree that the public health director has done a wonderful job. Also, we have other individuals in this county, in this situation, that have been there on the job, showed up every day, day in, day out. And I think what we also need to do is to look at those individuals. If we're going to address one, we should address all of them. And this isn't something we have to do today. All right? Because this thing ain't over. I'm sorry, folks, but well, to you and I it is, yeah. I mean, but we have another couple of months are going to go by, and it's going to get less and less, and pretty soon, hopefully, it'll disappear. But that's not the only individual out there. I mean, we have a number of employees, salaried and non-salaried alike, that have done fantastic work for us. And I think we need to look at all of those people. And this is, it's opening it up, but this is something that we did back when, I believe it was, and Tom and Virginia, maybe correct me, Gary, I thought we did something on this order back in 14 or 15, and I could be incorrect on that, but where we rewarded people that did good jobs. But like I say, this is not the only individual that we should look at. I mean, I'm looking back at Todd. He was there every day of the week, and he pats himself on the back every now and then and gets his attaboy. But his crew has done a wonderful job too, so I think we need to look a little bit wider than just one person right now.
My position, and I mean, that's fine if the committee wishes to do that. My position would be that none has been so extreme, though, as public health. I mean, that position, that department has been, I would argue, very different than the other departments. I mean, certainly Highway Department does an outstanding job every day. I guess I would question what were they doing additionally during this time. There are other departments that were doing less quite a bit less. And so I don't know that I would, unless there's something I'm not aware of, I don't know that there are any where it has been as extreme as it has been for public health. That's my rationale.
Any discussion? So what are we gonna do? Pass it on to Dan and let him bring it up?
If you don't have some sort of action out of this committee, it will simply die. That's all. I mean, so it's kind of up to you. I'm not, if finance I'm simply brought it to you as a suggestion. If finance has no, if there's no impetus to pursue it, then, I'm gonna leave it and move on to the next item.
Virginia,
I think we should do something on this, but I also think you're right that there are other people, even in that department, that went above and beyond the call of duty, and then we can't just.
They're paid hourly. She's the only salaried employee.
Everybody's hourly down there
Yes,
except
she's the
for
only salaried.
Okay, yeah, because I don't want to slight another salaried person because of this. I don't think we want to single out one person if we can. So I think we need to look at the whole picture for the salaried people.
I agree. I think there may be other people who are salaried. I don't know how we go about doing that. So I have that same sentiment. I don't know if it's a practical way we can get at that. But I also feel like we ought not to be hasty in doing this until we're a little further along in getting out from under it. Doing something right now seems a little hurried.
Tom, you're just aching.
I just have another one of my comments. I think this issue should be brought forward out of the executive committee because that committee is responsible for personnel issues, and it's up to the finance committee to find the money how to pay those things. So I think we're going about it the wrong way here.
Mr. Chair.
I would agree with Tom.
Go ahead, Scott.
As a matter of course, the executive committee could make a recommendation for this position or any other position. And because as the executive committee, they have the authority to set staffing levels and compensation levels. So therefore, if the executive committee were to recommend a specific compensation, whether permanent or one-time, they have the authority to do so. Because it would be new funding or a change in funding, the finance committee would then have to approve that. But if the finance committee does take no action today, that does not preclude the executive committee from taking action if they see fit.
One other comment I would make, I mean, I appreciate that, this isn't done because there are those who will wish to carry it out in our country for as long as they can. However, I do think that the public health department has kind of been at this and in the thick of this for a year now. So I don't know that I would see, I think it's definitely time to consider it from that perspective for them because, it's gone on. They have been dealing with this for a very long time, and it actually is, it has become less currently than what it was at its height.
So my question is, does this committee, should we make a motion and recommendation to send this to executive as opposed to doing nothing, if that's what we wish to do? I mean, if we don't want to take action at this committee, but we would like to see something move forward, do we recommend sending it to executive or do we just?
If you're saying you don't desire to do anything and you would rather kick it over to another committee, I'll be happy to simply take it.
Well, I think Tom's brief explanation, the fact that they do take care of the personnel and that sort of thing, it does seem like it should be generated from executive, unless Tom's mistaken and my belief in that is mistaken.
I don't think you're mistaken. I do think it can go either way, and that's fine. If this committee has no strong desire, take it over there.
Virginia?
Just want to make a comment. I sit on another nonprofit board that just had the same executive meeting as we're talking about right now. And what they decided to do was to take all the person's vacation time and carry it into next year and let them basically take the time off as vacation in the following year rather than pay out extra money.
That is an option. I will, and I'm not saying that it can't be done. The only difference that I will throw out there is that a payment can be funded through the CARES Act. Comp time and vacation would not be. So that would be on, if you want to say it that way, would be on the county dime as opposed to the CARES Act dime.
So Scott, just to be clear, then I thought we had asked at one point if the CARES Act funding could be used, but I thought it was stated that it could not be used for a salaried employee.
No, you can, sorry, go ahead.
Her normal salary, no, because the county's going to pay that anyway. If we're talking above and beyond, that should be the difference. And just like if we have an employee that's scheduled to be 100% WIC, we can't just take them out of here and put them here and charge that way. However, if they are doing that activity, that's not supplanting is the word that the government likes to use. In this case, we're not supplanting her normal salary. This is recognition above and beyond for hundreds of hours worked in excess. We're not taking her salary out of the county funding. We are talking about a separate payment for work directly related to the COVID and everything else for that grant. That's the difference.
So it's highly likely then that the CARES Act would pay the compensation that would be.
Absolutely.
I don't see that being a problem.
That's good to know. I didn't.
Right. And if we have a long shot here where they said, no, we don't, because there's something in the fine writings place, because of the COVID activities, the normal activity that the health department normally would have done through the general fund aren't done. So they've got a $30,000 to $50,000 that they're going to give back to the general fund. So if we're talking $2,000 payment, there is that source if we absolutely had to. I still think that the CARES fund is going to cover it because it is directly related to the CARES activities.
And I believe, and I concur with Mr. Kunish in the respect that I know that other counties have made such payments and CARES Act money has paid for those extra payments.
Thank you for that clarification. And I guess just one more thing, we probably are not in any position that we need to move forward rapidly on this. I mean, we're not out of the woods yet as far as nationally how things are being dealt with and further incurring overtime above and beyond our salary on this. So I don't know that we want to move this to executive or we just simply want to move it forward on our next month's agenda.
Doug?
I agree with Chairman Olson that the most visible extra effort is by the health director. My ignorance about what other people may be doing.
No.
I don't want to overlook somebody. And is there a vehicle by where we could evaluate that in the next month or two? What other people have done during this and not who has extraordinary effort?
I'm sorry, that was just a comment, not a question, correct? Okay, I'm sorry.
Is there a way to find out if there are others who have put in a similar effort, maybe not as great, but still above and beyond?
Absolutely, Supervisor Baker. We can get information from what other counties have done. That's not a problem.
I'm talking about people within our county.
Oh, people within Kewaunee County. I can try to collect that information as well.
So we're looking for others who like the candidates for maybe not the same size or something that's recognized there. If that is possible, I'd like to pursue that before we decide on what.
Okay, Virginia.
Well, I think I'd like to go forward with a recommendation to the executive that if payments are covered by CARES, let's authorize them to do that. Because we're not looking for us to come up with the money. We're looking to utilize money that's sitting out there.
So is that a motion?
If I can make it as a motion, yes, that's what it would be.
Okay. So restate your motion, please.
Okay. To, to authorize the executive committee to move forward with, what, you're saying, no, I'm not saying it right.
No, you're fine.
Okay. To authorize executive
Ross?
committee to go forward with compensation for people that were affected by the COVID-19 and that it would be covered by the CARES Act.
Okay. Now, are we talking anyone or just salary?
Well, I think if they can come up with other people that we can compensate, that CARES will cover, I'm open to either one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I would put it on the executive committee's plate.
Paul, did you kind of get that?
Yeah.
Why don't you read it back? All right.
You can, I mean, it's fine to make a motion if you want to, but it'd be simple enough for me to just ask Mr. Felt to add it to Monday's agenda too. That we would, take this issue up at executive.
The key component there, though, is I think they're saying if you can find CARES money, then you can spend it. So to the extent you need a motion to spend money, I think that's in order.
Okay. Virginia made a motion to spend money.
It's a motion we hear all the time.
We need a second. Anybody? Thomas seconding. All right. Any more discussion?
Now it works. Okay, so does this mean that we're leaving it up to the executive committee to decide whether or not to look further than the health director for a bonus? Or is this, we're just saying whatever you guys decide is fine?
The way I understand the direction, Supervisor Baker, in Supervisor Haskey's motion is a recommendation to the executive committee that they do some type of discussion / analysis motion as to public health director and or any other deemed employees that are deemed eligible for some type of an additional compensation payment. So it's more than just one employee. And also from Chairman Olson's standpoint, I think that while we talk about the public health director, because that is on the agenda, if it expands beyond the public health director, I think we're okay from an agenda item standpoint. So I'm not sure anything will need to be added. Is that sufficient, Supervisor Baker?
Thank you, yes.
Any more discussion? All right. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on.
We have sorry, if I may, we have an item that was part of your amended agenda. Our county in fact, Mr. Hanson, you may want to go to the white table right there. So that way, if there's questions, there's fine as well. That way, if there is questions, you can answer them. You have from the material that was given to you. We are in the need of contracting with another county surveyor. RFPs and interest was put out there, and the responses were extremely limited. In fact, if we really want to be honest, there was really about only one response, which would be Dave Krauser. But for us to move forward, we would need an approval from the Finance Committee. Mr. Hanson, do you have anything to add at all?
Basically, the only thing I'd say is that the county has to either have a staff person who's a county surveyor or contract with somebody. So in the past, we had Baldwin Incorporated in Sturgeon Bay for probably 20, 30 years. Then Kip Inman did it for the last 14. And we have to have somebody now. So I guess there isn't hardly any work as far as the monuments and stuff anymore. We completed that project probably 5 years ago now. So we used to spend a lot of money on this, but now it's one or 2,000 a year it's been. So, and I guess, yes, I put out to the two firms that I thought would be the best, and Ayers said that they're not able to. So Mao and Associates is our best bet, I think.
So we are asking for a recommendation of approval.
Go ahead, Doug. Question?
Yes, what is the total for the year we're gonna be paying to this for the surveyor?
As of right now, there's $0 budgeted. And so the there is no cost. If there is, the county has to do this work if something does come up during the year. But I have my LIO fund, I would pay for it out of there probably. So like I said, the most we've spent in the last 3-4 years has been $2,000 a year, you know.
Okay.
And part of the reason why is if all of a sudden a monument gets moved or something in that respect, and therefore we have to have a surveyor come and do that work. The reason why there's not really a budget is because there is not specific work that needs to be done every year. So therefore, we don't necessarily budget for it. But if the work does need to be done, there's sufficient fund within the LIO fund, but within the LIO fund and the budget to pay for any of that work.
I'll move to accept the proposal by Dave Krauser and Mao and Associates.
Second.
Okay, moved by Jeff, second by Tom before Doak get his hand up. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have put forward to the committee a request to carry over funds from 2020 into 2021. There are 3 different areas or 3 different line items where I want those, where I'm requesting those funds to be brought forward from 2020 into 2021. I'll start first under the county administrator's budget item, which is contracted services. There's currently $15,465 from 2020 that I'm asking be carried over. Purpose of this is, well, first, the reason for that there is 15,000 is we had in 2020 a budget line item that funded for a phase 2 of the jail study, the countywide housing study, and the 911 study. Both the housing study and the 911 study came in under what was budgeted. Therefore, there's roughly, again, about $15,000. What my thought is with that $15,000 is there has been some discussion regarding the jail study phase 3. Regardless, there's some thought about doing soil boring and a site survey of the site of the 20 acres that is adjacent to us. That if we need to do that work, I could therefore move forward that $15,465 to be able to pay for that work, and we would not have to necessarily take it from the general fund. Second is the professional development. In 2020, I was planning on doing much more of employee training, especially from a management standpoint. But the COVID kind of really put a kibosh on that. So I would like to bring that back in earnest and really start to do some management training with department heads and with staff. Therefore, asking that the professional development line be carried over to 2021. And the same thing in 2020, because we were having people work from home and the like, we were not able to do a number of the employee recognition events that I would have liked to have done. So I'm requesting that money be carried over from the employee recognition line in the county board budget to move forward to do employee recognition events in 2021.
Doak.
Are you asking to earmark the money or move it over undesignated for the contracted services? You've mentioned the study or the soil borings. Are you trying to say you'd like to take it for that work or just move it into the general account?
I would like to move it in at this point undesignated, but my intention is to be that if the county board would like to do the soil borings and the site survey, then we have a line item of funding that would allow that to be done instead of having to go to the full county board to approve the transfer of $15,000 from the general fund. If the finance committee were to approve this transfer of this carryover, then what we could do is we could provide the site survey and soil borings without having to get a 2/3 approval from the county board to do that preliminary work.
What would that make your total budget in that line?
Oh. I believe, honestly, $15,465, because I don't believe that I had budgeted anything for contracted services for 2021.
Yeah, the budget said 0. Yeah, you're right.
So if I may ask, I see under options that we can approve each request. So we're looking at anything from county board, employee recognition, the professional development, as well as the contracted services. Are you looking at those as collectively, or are we only looking at the contracted services, $15,000 at this time?
From an options standpoint, Supervisor Bolenweider, I put this all as an aggregate type of motion, but as a committee, you can decide to do each of these one by one. You can decide to modify the dollar amount of any of these. You can decide to do absolutely none of them. So from the full amount, I would be asking for the carryover of all 3 of these budget lines. But as a committee, you have the authority to approve any dollar amount or absolutely no dollar amount from any of those budget lines.
So my question would be regarding the employee recognition. Do we have money budgeted for that for 2021?
Yes, we do. $3,000.
So as long as we're able to get back into the normality of employee recognition and money's budgeted, I would say the $2,850 that we have on here could be returned to the general fund, would be my opinion.
For the third line, we've talked the other 2. The professional development of 10,000, that would just about double your budget, right? Because you have 12,000 in there already. I'm just wondering, what is the extra money going to pay for?
I would really like to start doing some department head management training, and to do some of the training to have unit supervisors as well as managers really have some good training as to how to be good and effective managers. Right now, we have not had, since I have been here for 6 years, any type of formalized training for our department heads on management.
Do you have any training specifically in mind where you've gotten pricing that you need the extra money?
Not, I'm going to say it this way, no from any specific pricing. Have I done some general research as to management training? Yes. And again, it all depends on the type of training, and what has always been what's been the limiting factor for me has always been, okay, if I only have $6,000, does that provide me sufficient money to really do good management training? And so I've always been looking at the training from the dollar amount as opposed to the type of training that I'd like to have. But I want to be very clear, Supervisor Baker, do I have a specific training program in mind right now? I do not.
Tom.
I just feel that this money should all lapse to the unassigned general fund, and during the year, if money is needed that is unbudgeted, that we can always resort back to it rather than moving money to another line item and we may not need it. That's just my feeling.
So now we got a lot of statements, but no motions. Doak.
I make a motion that we carry over the contracted services excess to this year's budget, but return the professional development and the recognition back to the general fund.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, gentlemen and lady.
All right, now we get to hear from the man that spends the most money.
Expect to be pulled over on the way home.
Could you say that in the microphone, please?
You got the most.
Mr. Every, can you turn your mic on and bring it closer to you, please?
How's this?
Much
There you
better.
go.
Would you like me just to start, John?
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead.
I'm assuming you have all the information in your packet in regards to contracting for some work in the that we're going to be performing this summer on the County Highway AB and Main Street in the village of Luxembourg. To give a brief history, back in 2016, the county and the village entered into a contract to share some costs for improving Main Street and AB in the village of Luxembourg. The village paid for the work that was done in 2016. In return, and in that agreement, the county agreed to do some work before 2022 on the remaining portion of the road within the village limits. So we had those designs prepared, that work bid out for this year, and the information is in front of you in regards to a recommendation for the lowest responsible bidder to perform the work on County Highway AB, in addition to a small portion of County Highway A, from County Highway AB to the village limits going to the east, being that pavement was in the same age as the remaining work portion of the road that we're going to be working on. We thought it'd be a good idea to do it all at the same time. So we bid that out and we got proposals, and our portion of the work, meaning the black topping and some storm sewer repair, curb repair work, totals between those two different portions of road came to approximately $507,000 and some change. And the highway committee considered the bids and is recommending that we move forward with contracting with Dorner Inc. for that amount this summer for resurfacing County Highway AB and County Highway A. And the resurfacing part is basically milling 3 inches of pavement off of the existing road and repaving 3 inches.
Any question, Doug?
I was looking at the budget for this one. It looks like there's 390,000, not 507. And it looks like that extra bit of road was, I think you just mentioned, you thought it was the right time to do it.
Correct. So we adjusted our paving schedule to accommodate that.
Was that in a future year? Was that just not showing up in this year? Is that what happened with that?
Actually, I think, Mr. Baker, that it wasn't in a future year, but we, being that we were going to be in the area, we just felt it was a good thing to do for that portion of the road. We try to anticipate as best we can with our 5-year plan and 4 to 6 year plan as far as paving, but this happened to be something that this isn't work that we normally do with a milling and repaving of urban areas. I'm going to call it urban because it's curb and gutter. Just thought it was a good time to do it.
So you're going over your planned spending for that area by 120 or thereabouts. Does that displace some other work?
We've budgeted with this year's construction budget within our annual highway department budget. We've accommodated for that job within there. So I wouldn't say that we're going over budget, and maybe the representation from a previous schedule or capital improvement program, in previous years when we were doing the estimating, we went over. But now that we have the bid prices, we would adjust our annual budget accordingly. We have one. I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to find out where you're getting the extra 120, because that 390 was in the approved budget.
Right. And the 390 represented as a guide. Within our budget, we usually budget approximately 1.5 million for paving improvements or construction improvements, our paving program. And every year when we go into the beginning of the year, that we take that 1.5 million and divide it between the jobs that we can.
Okay.
And so we have that within the $1.5 million budget. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, John, I'd like to add one other thing. A portion of the funding for this, as I have on the financial impact portion of the summary, is that I did apply for the County Highway Improvement Discretionary Program for this project, and the county did receive $195,000 for that. So that program works where if you spend twice that amount, okay, it's a 50-50 program. So let's just call it $400,000. We're going to get reimbursement from the state through this program for $195,000. And that is all, that revenue is also within this year's budget.
Okay. Of course, because we're spending money, we need to have a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the spending of $507,000 for the road work described in Mr. Every's note.
Okay. And Tom second. Any comments? Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next one, 13. I'll give some background, and Scott, you can come in anytime you want, but Administrator Felt and I were talking, and he brought up the fact that the county's buildings are all named after a building. Expo Center, Administration Building, jail. And Scott had commented to the fact that, you know, we've had an individual here in the county that has served the county for 38 plus years as a county clerk and administrator, former administrator Ed Dorner. And I agreed with him that maybe it's time that what we do, instead of just naming our buildings as an administration center, as a human services center, that we consider naming the buildings after those, not particularly those that are county employees, but people within the county that have done a commendable job over a period of time, and we consider naming our buildings after those persons. With that in mind, I volunteered to contact Ed Dorner if he would be willing to have the administration building named after him. Ed didn't know what to say when I talked to him. Ed is never really a guy for a lot of words, but when I initially talked to him, Ed told me he felt it was an absolute wonderful recognition, but he didn't think he was worthy of it. And he says, you know, I got to think about it. And I said, well, it's fine, you know, get back to me in a day or so, think about it. Ed's wife, he banged that what I had told him off of his wife, and his wife, when he called me back an hour later, he says, I thought you was going to hit me. And she said, Ed, you crazy not to take that recognition. She says, you, for 38 years, you gave everything that you had to the county and really never accepted anything in return. And she felt that he deserved the credit for the naming of that building after him, and made him call me right away. So it was unusual. I could hear her in the background, and she was. I think that she was more excited than Ed probably was about it. But if the committee would like to get behind it, I would certainly like to see someone from the committee make a motion that we go forward and recommend to the board that we do name the administration building the Edward J. Dorner Administration Building.
I would
Virginia.
love to make that motion. I think it was something that should have been coming a long time ago for Ed.
I agree. Do we have a second?
I will throw out just, if I may, Mr. Chair, some other background is, yes, Mr. Dorner had spent 24 years as county clerk, which for years, the county clerk was in many ways the de facto administrator / budget director. After 24 years, the county then, through the good fortune, named Mr. Dorner as the county administrator. Therefore, as 38 years, he basically a generation, he has helped to guide Kewaunee County. And so from my standpoint as my predecessor, I think that this is something that can be done. It can be done not only as recognition, but the cost to do that. I had looked into the cost of putting up letters onto the administration building. The administration center, because if you look at the building, it says administration center. The letters are going to cost roughly $750 plus whatever staff time it is to put them up. If we wanted to do the sign that is there on the corner, that would be a little more expensive. That would be in the thousands just because of how that sign has been put together. But what we could do there is we could also place we could attach letters roughly about the same cost to the metal onto that sign as well. I know that we have named some of our parks after notables within our community. And it was just my feeling that for a person that has helped to guide Kewaunee County to where it's at today, that this is a small token of appreciation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other comments? Stoke?
I never met Mr. Dorner, and I only knew of him through the press. So I'm reluctant to second it because I thought someone who knew him better would be there to do that. I think the other part I'm concerned about is that we've already approached him about this. So we've kind of opened that possibility. I'd not like to see us make that public and then retract it. Therefore, I'm going to second Linda's motion.
Okay. That motion has been made and seconded. Any comments? Tom? I am. Yes, sir.
Is this the committee that should come from?
We would be the Public Property Committee, yes. I see a hand in the background. I'm going to refer to him. Bob, go ahead.
Mr. Widener, if you could come up to one of the microphones and speak there, please.
The topic, a similar topic has been discussed along the way with various notable members of the county board and county employees. And the discussion fell along the lines of instead of naming entire buildings, naming rooms within that building. For instance, this building, the most notable public area is the county boardroom. And I would think, at the time, the discussion went that customarily government buildings, except for federal post offices, et cetera, don't carry the name of an individual, but they are recognized through some part or facility within that building. Now, we did name the park for Mr. Reckelberg for his 30-some years of service, but we didn't name the entire Parks Department for Mr. Reckelberg. One of the key discussion items was that to make it clear to the public, we're talking about facilities that describe what they do, like the highway department, instead of the John Smith building. It has no meaning to anyone after 50 years. So I would, and I think it was wise at the time we had discussions about this, to consider naming part of a building, but not an entire facility. And as you travel through the state, I've been at many courthouses and jails and whatnot. And I don't think it's very common that a government building, other than federal buildings, because those are acts of Congress usually, are named after a person. Thank you for letting me say a few things.
That would allow us to be able to, I mean, Bob's suggestion, that would allow us to be able to name various rooms after other individuals as well who have served. I mean, gives you more options. I would recommend we could name the bathrooms after Supervisor Masteler.
I told you that we should do that.
Mr. Chair, are you wanting it to be a whole bathroom or only a specific stall?
Well, we could have the Supervisor John A. Masteler Memorial Toilet.
I agree. You and I talked about that. I said that'd be a.
I do think, in all seriousness, I do think Ed Dorner certainly would, be deserving of some type of recognition. He certainly served this county for many years.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Baker.
Is there a way we can pull this back a little bit and just get a more, not just a specific issue to the naming of this building or for Mr. Dorner, but kind of come up with a plan where if we're going to add names to that or consider other names for other rooms, that we have kind of a plan moving forward before we take action on this?
There's a motion in a second right now.
Yeah, we got to.
Can I amend the motion to?
We have a motion in a second. We got to deal with that before we do anything.
Well, you can rescind the motion in the second if you choose. You can amend the motion in the second if you choose, or you can act upon the motion or second.
I'd like to rescind my second then.
Say that one again.
He's asking to rescind a second so that the motion is in want of a second right now.
Okay. So we have a motion, but we do not have a second.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'm getting a sense of the committee that, at least for right now, the motion will die from a lack of a second, but that the committee would like there to be some type of procedure or process. I'll call it a naming and recognition process, that it be drafted and brought before the committee.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I believe once there's a motion, there's no discussion until there's a second. And if there is no second, the motion dies. Is that not where we're at?
Yeah. Okay, we don't have a second for it, so motion is going to die. Now let's go back to Scott. Bring it back up.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I am assuming or at least I'm intuiting from the discussion of the committee that there is appetite for recognizing long-term and employees of some note and significance, but that prior to doing that, there be some type of process brought forth as to whether that is a specific room, whether that is just how that would be put forward and how that would be determined. Because whether it's a building or whether it's a room, the former chair Widener had talked about how we've named parks, but not a whole park system. That is true. In that same respect, we have multiple buildings. Could you name a building if the board were to see fit? Absolutely, they could. Could the board decide instead to just name rooms? Absolutely, if they were to see fit. I am going to assume, again, from what I'm hearing from this committee, is they would like to see some type of process as to how that would move forward.
Sure. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is that something we can just put on the agenda for next time that, and I don't know if Scott or Jeff would be the right ones to just kind of a one-page summary guidance around how to do that, and we could review it and either agree to that process and then move forward? Is that possible to do?
I think it would be on.
If the committee would like something ready for the April meeting as to a possible naming process and procedure, we could have a draft ready for the committee.
What's your feeling, committee? Yes, no? I don't think.
You
we
can
do.
just direct staff and that you don't need a specific motion.
Oh, I think Doug just mentioned that, so.
I'd like to proceed with that, yes.
As long as everyone's nodding their heads, the only thing is that one may say it, but if there's not a general consensus of the committee, but from what I'm seeing with nodding heads, that there is a general consensus.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So what we're going to be looking at as a committee is to come up with some kind of a recommendation to the county board for these naming rights. This committee is not going to take it upon themselves to adopt a policy of naming buildings or rooms or whatever else we're going to name without support of the full board, are we?
No.
Thank you.
We can decide that on our own.
John's John. That's liquid waste. I'm not in that yet.
Would we like to move on to number 14?
Discussion of fees.
So this will be very quick. You have in your packet a list of 16 different departments that have fees, that charge fees to the public or otherwise. As when we had first talked about the items the committee would be looking at over the course of the year, the three were first, the sales tax, second was review of county fees, and then third would be debt and how we go about that. So the second in our line is county department fees. I am with the approval of the committee, I will then be requesting from each of the department heads that do charge fees to start to collect what is it that we charge, when's the last, what amount that is, what's the last time that we made the change, and then also give them a list of counties within the area as a gauge as to where our fees are compared to other counties within the area. And therefore, when that information is collected, then we can start to have that discussion amongst the committee as well as the department heads themselves to participate as to whether certain fees should be raised or not. Some we would not be able to. I'll give one real specific example is the clerk of courts. Clerk of courts fees are set by the state, and so therefore the county, for many of those fees, we have no say as to what they're set at, nor can we raise them or lower them. But with the committee's approval, I can start that process, but I wanted approval before I started moving forward. As long as everyone nods their head, then I'm going to assume that I can move forward. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. You all got a copy of supplemental payroll. You had a chance to review it. The vendor payments, they were electronic.
I would make a motion to approve the supplemental payroll as presented.
All right, motion made by Tom, seconded by Doak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Before you leave, Mr. Chair, should we set the next meeting date?
Yes, we should.
The next meeting in April, the first Friday of April would be April 2nd, but could, if it please the committee, could we make it the 9th instead to give us time to do the overtime report and everything else?
It's also Good Friday, so we're
Good
not.
Friday, so
So
you guys are probably, you salaried guys are taking off, right?
I have no idea.
There's
Well,
a-
it depends what all happens. So April 9th? April 9th?
April 9th. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Supplemental payroll, who's got it? Can I have it? I'll sign it and then I'll, Tom, you're gonna take over.
Oh, you're leaving?
I'm leaving.
Okay.
And we have no other matters as authorized by law, Mr. Chair, so.
Okay, item 17, extension of the BLS lease. This has been before the committee a number of months now. And there's a copy of the proposed agreement that was attached to the agenda. I guess I would open the floor for any discussion on it, and I'd like to see some action taken on that item today.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
For those that have read it or otherwise, I would ask that Corporation Counsel give a slight summary as to what are the changes within the contract, so that way committee members are aware instead of having to try to figure out what was changed from the previous contract.
Essentially, the only change is that previously it was written as a 5-year lease with an option to extend for another 5 after that. What we've done now is make it essentially a 10 or I think 11-year lease. So the lease would go from now until December 31, 2031. The rent I reflected in there is currently for this year 61. I missed that spot here.
6151.
6151. I think that has been paid, but I put that in there to show you what the rent is now. And now each year going forward, that'll be adjusted by CPI for the next 11 years. The reason why Mr. Master wants some certainty is I think he is on the verge of making some capital expenditures, and obviously he wants to know his lease is good for a set amount of time. With this lease, though, now previously it was written such that perhaps we could get out of it if we, for some reason, wanted to do something else with that property. Now it's written basically it's set in stone unless one of the parties defaults. They're not paying the rent, they're not doing the things they need to do, and they don't take care of it. So this is going to be a firm lease until 2031.
There is one other item. If you look in the tipping fee per tonnage, it used to be a $1 for the first 1,000, $2 up to I believe it was 3,500, 2,500, and then $3 after that. There had been some request of the committee regarding trying to make the tipping fee from CPI, which makes it a little bit difficult. So in our negotiations with Blue Water Services, we instead added a fourth line item of tonnage that if Blue Water were to have an exceptionally good year, then they would be paying $4 per ton in excess of 10,000 tons. Currently, they do not reach that at this time. I believe it was closer to the 4 to 6 range, but if that were to happen, then $4 a ton would be provided after 10,000 tons. So the CPI for the rent is the same as what it was previously. There's an additional line from a tippage standpoint, and the contract is going out for 11 years.
What has the revenue been on the tipping fees roughly? I didn't see that.
I'll be honest, I'm unsure at this present time.
What was the question?
How much the tipping fees were on an annual basis paid?
$6,000 to $7,000.
So the
$6,000 to $7,000.
Okay, so that's in addition to.
In addition to the 6,000-ish of rent.
Thank you.
Supervisor Baker.
Jeff, why did we concede on the, the escape clause?
John wanted some certainty with his facility. As I understand it, he needs to put a compactor in there, and that compactor is in the several $100,000 range. And he's not going to spend that kind of money unless he's got a 10-year lease. So that's how we came up with it.
Okay.
He's spending he told us at the last meeting, he's spending a considerable amount of money that, he needs to know that he will be able to operate rather than invest such a large amount of money, and then we could boot him.
I guess the question I had is, we had it in there originally and you felt you were comfortable with letting that lapse.
Right. So at the time we entered this agreement, we didn't know how this was going to go. Perhaps we'd have some other ideas for that site. So we wanted to give ourselves an opportunity to get out of this lease if we felt it was appropriate. Maybe we just didn't like the operation up there for whatever reason. But I think everybody's reasonably satisfied. This takes care of a problem for us in that we have this facility up there. We're getting some rents for it. And then also the community has an option for taking their garbage. So to me, it seems like this is just a headache off our plate, and we make 12 grand a year roughly on this deal. So, and he's maintaining our building. I think that's another issue, is he's going to have to stick some money into that building, which I understand has not been improved basically since it's been built.
Mr. Every has something to possibly add.
Not that I'm the landlord of that particular building anymore, because I'm glad that I'm not. However, I think, and Paul mentioned a portion of the fixed fees that come back. The other portion, one is the rent and one is the variable based upon the tonnage. I just wanted to mention that those two things combined to pay administrative fees that the solid waste operations of my department still need to pay the town of West Kewaunee.
Correct, Mr. Every, is that the rent actually covers any administrative payments that we need to make to the town of West Kewaunee. So another issue that, or at least why administration recommends, is that this is a area where the county covers its costs and makes a little bit extra. And Mr. Wisnicki is correct. When we first did this, we weren't sure how this was going to go, whether it was going to go well. I think time has shown that it is operating well. And we have someone that is going to, as Chair Olson had said, invest a significant amount of money in machinery, as well as some improvements to the bail house building itself out of his own pocket. So therefore, to recuperate those investments, he is looking for a solid 10-year, 11-year lease.
Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead.
So I'm okay with everything that's being proposed, with the exception of the exit clause. I don't doubt that there's going to be a significant amount of money invested in the property. 10 years is a long time. If you're investing a significant amount of money, you'll need that much time to recoup. My suggestion would be, why not, if everyone feels it's likely that that investment's going to occur, why not still have that as some sort of sunset clause? If, let's say, not by 3 years or 5 years from now, that significant amount of money, and however the language is, has not been met, we still would have then an exit strategy to get out of that contract for 10 years. We've had things in the city where contractors have promised they're going to make a development on a property, and then it never happens. And one example would be Marquette School. So not to compare this to Marquette School, but exit strategy and a sunset clause, I think, should be written into the contract.
Is there any foreseeable purpose that we would have for this property? I mean, can anybody, I mean, I know it's a long time to kind of forecast out there, but can anybody think of anything that the county would have come up to do with this? I mean, other than, you know, possibly putting the county shop there? I'm kidding. We wouldn't really build your shop on top of a garbage mound.
So I just want to, funny. Thank you, Chairman.
Now that John's gone,
Right.
you are the subject.
I just wanted to remind the committee that there's kind of two different things going on here. There's the actual lease that Blue Water Services has for basically the fenced in area up there and a little bit more. The rest of that property up there is still county property and is not dedicated or anything else like that to anything. You know, obviously you have the cap landfill, which nothing's going to have there, but there is other land up there too, which is not under lease. It's just county property.
Can't go there. So my question would be, if Blue Water Services were to default and we couldn't escape and they just went out of business, are we obligated to provide that service or is that just a convenience to the county right now?
We have no obligation to provide this service. So if they were to not stop paying, obviously we can terminate the contract. If they're making a total mess up there and we say, John, you got to clean up the facility.
cause, yep.
Yep. And he doesn't, we can get out of it. So, I mean, if he's not following a contract, yes, we can get out of it. I don't have any specific hook about you spending, you know, several $100,000. But it's a firm, you know, 10, 11-year lease.
What if he doesn't? He will be turning away, as I understand it, the current compactor just doesn't have the capacity. So he would just be turning away business, right? Which is,
And the
we're not obligated to provide that as a county. So it is, I guess the downside of him not making the investment or just stopping to, you know, just defaulting on that business doesn't really, it's not affecting an obligation the county has.
Correct. The only effect would be is that if he were to go out of business, the county is obligated to the roughly $6,000. Well, actually less than six, but the payments to the town of West Kewaunee.
Any other discussion on the issue? Otherwise, we have the lease agreement before us. I would entertain a motion to either approve as written, motion to amend, or whatever else the committee would prefer.
I make a motion to approve the contract as it's written.
Do I hear
Blue
a
Water
second?
Services.
I will
by
second
Jenny.
it.
It's been moved by Doak, second by Jenny, to approve the Bale House lease agreement as proposed. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you, folks.
Mr. Chair, there will need to be a motion for adjournment.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Jeff, second by Doak to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. We are adjourned at 10 o'clock.
And for the pay plan subcommittee, let's just, let's have a pause for just 3 minutes and then we'll go from there.
Are we moving to the other meeting or are we staying in here?
We're staying in here.
Okay.
What's that? Did you bring up